In this exercise, I want to show you what layer masking can do to add some dynamic interest to your designs. So let's get started. To get started on this exercise, let's create a new document from scratch. And inside this document, choose the Character Animation tab and with the HD subhead. This will give you a document that's 1280 by 720 pixels and a frame rate of 24 pixels per inch. We also want to keep our platform type at ActionScript 3. When we say create, this will set up our new document. And the first thing we want to do is to change our zoom level to show everything that's on here. The first thing I want to do is to change the color of the background on my stage. We don't always have to keep it white. If you go to your Properties panel, select the Document subtab and click on the Stage Color. From here, I'm going to turn my stage color into this dark gray right here at the very top. Next, let's animate a bar as it rotates onto the middle of our stage. In order to do this, I'm going to go down to my timeline and double click on the layer. We're going to call this the bar layer. And I'm going to select my rectangle tool. With the rectangle tool selected, go over to your Properties panel and make sure Object Drawing Mode is checked on. I'm going to set the fill color to be white and the stroke color to be none, so we don't have to worry about an outline around it. Then simply click in the middle of it and hold your Shift key to create a perfect square. It doesn't have to be terribly large. Now, to make sure that this square is perfectly centered within your stage, choose your black arrow selection tool and select the square. You can then open up your alignment panel, make sure Align to Stage is checked on, and click on Align Horizontal and then Align Vertical. This will put it dead center into your stage that you have. Now let's save this as a symbol that we can animate. So selecting your little square, we'll go up to Modify and Convert to Symbol. We'll name this symbol the bar. Make sure it's a graphic type with center registration, and we'll say OK to that. Now to animate it, we want it to rotate once and then stretch out along the way. Let's have it last for 1 second. So going down to our timeline, create a new keyframe at frame 24, which is 1 second. And on that 24th frame, we can choose our free transform tool and simply click on the left or right edge to drag it out almost to the very end of your stage. That's what we want to look like from here. Then to animate it, let's go back to frame number 1. We'll right click on that and do our classic tween in between there. Now to rotate this as it animates, with frame 1 selected, let's go over to our Properties panel. Inside of tweening, the first thing we'll do is we'll add some easing in and easing out. So click on Classic Ease, choose Ease In and Out, and then double click on Quadratic. Also underneath it, locate the Rotate. By default, Auto is always selected, but let's have it rotate clockwise just once. With that done, when we hit Return, this is the results that we get. Pretty cool. Now let's animate the text Welcome to and Digital Animation onto the stage. To do this, let's go down to our timeline. Let's do a new layer. This layer will be above the bar layer. This will be our Welcome to layer. We want this Welcome to start as soon as the bar ends. So I'm actually going to give it a little bit more time. I'm going to go to keyframe 30 on our bar layer and hit F5 to give it some more time, and keyframe or frame 30 on the Welcome to and hit F6 to insert a keyframe. Also, while we're down here, let's go ahead and lock down that bar layer so we don't accidentally work on it. Make sure you're in the Welcome to keyframe 30. From here, let's choose our Type tool. Then you can click once anywhere on the stage, and this will give you your blinking cursor. Type out the words Welcome to. You can also highlight the text, and looking over in the Properties panel, here's where you can change the font and the size of it. Now, I don't really care which font that you choose, as long as it's large enough to fill out the entire area. As far as the size goes, you can click and drag on the size to make it larger or smaller, but it tends to max out at 96 points. To make it larger than that, simply double click on it and type out the amount that you want. In my case, it looks like about 160 is going to fill it out pretty good. As far as the color goes, change your fill color to anything nice and bright. I'll let you choose, but I'm going to choose this bright blue to show up well. From here, I can kind of move it and rough it out into position. That looks pretty good from there. Let's do the same thing to a new layer for digital animation. So create a new layer, double click, we'll call this my digital animation layer. We'll insert a new keyframe at frame 30, F6, right there. Choose your type tool, click once, and on this layer, type out digital animation. You can see this is going to take up a lot more room, so I'm going to change my size for this one to about 110. That looks good for there. And we'll rough that in and put that into here. So we want the words welcome to come up and digital animation to drop down. Now before we move on, we need to turn these into symbols. So select the words welcome to. You can go up to modify and convert to symbol. I'll call this the welcome to symbol. Make sure it's a graphic, center registration. We'll say OK. Let's do the same thing for a digital animation. By the way, you can right click on it and choose convert to symbol at the very bottom, and it'll give you the same thing. We'll call this digital animation for the graphic, symbol, and say OK to that. Now let's take this one at a time. I'm going to do the welcome to first. So going down to my timeline, turn off visibility for your your digital animation layer and select the welcome to layer. With that selected, we want to create a layer mask that will reveal the area that we want to animate. To do that, create a new layer on top of the welcome to layer. It's very important that it's on top. We're going to call this our welcome to mask. With it on top, right-click on the welcome to mask layer and select mask. Notice that the icon will change and it will put that layer underneath and nested inside of it. This means anything that's inside of the welcome to mask will be visible once it's animated. Here's what I mean by this. So on the welcome to mask layer, let's create a keyframe at frame 30. We'll hit F6. And we want to create an area to mask off where we want to show the words welcome to. And anything that's inside of that area will be visible. And outside, it'll be completely invisible. To do that, let's choose our rectangle tool one more time. And since we're working in the mask layer, let's change the color of this mask to something that's drastically different. So I'm going to change my fill color to like a bright red. It really doesn't matter what color that you have. Also, while we're down here, let's make sure we've unlocked our mask layer, and we're working on just it, and create a rectangle that completely covers the word welcome to and goes all the way down to the very bottom edge, or top edge of that line. Now we want to animate the words welcome to move into this red area. To make it simpler, I'm going to turn off visibility for my mask right now, and I'm going to unlock my welcome to layer. So this is the layer that we want to animate. While we're on our timeline, let's go to frame 45 and let's insert a keyframe for frame 45. This is where we want it to move into. So we can go back down to frame 30, select your move tool, and let's move it down and out of the way. So it's going to move from this bottom portion up into this top portion. Let's add our classic tween. So right click on frame 30 and insert your classic tween. This will move it up into position. Now of course we need to add some frameage for all these other parts. So let's go to this layer and hit F5 to insert some keyframes for our mask and also some frames for all of our other layers just to have them on there. Now when we turn on visibility for all of these layers, it's not really going to show us too much, but if you go up to Control and test your movie. It's going to go quick. You can see how the words welcome to are being masked into position. This is because whatever is inside of the mask, that's what's going to be visible. Now you can also animate the mask and not just the words or anything that's inside of it. Let's do that for digital animation. Going back down to our timeline, I'm just going to turn off visibility for the welcome to part, and let's work on the digital animation layer. With this one, we need to create a new layer, and we'll call this the digital animation mask, DA mask for short, and right click on that and choose mask, just like we did with this one. Again, we need to unlock this layer before we can do anything. Let's go to frame 30 and insert a keyframe here. So we'll hit F6. And just like we did with the others, let's click and drag and draw off a rectangle that completely covers up the word digital animation. Now we don't want this to be the starting point. Instead, let's move this out of the way. And we're going to have it start here and drop down into position. So to animate it, let's right click on the rectangle we created, choose Convert to Symbol. We'll call this the DA mask and say OK to that. Going down to our timeline, let's create a new keyframe at frame 45, hit F6, and at that moment we'll have it completely drop down into this position. So from there, going back to frame 30, we'll insert our classic tween that will move it all the way down into position here. Now the very last thing that we want to do is to turn on visibility for all of our layers, and let's give it a little bit more time so that we can view it. So let's go to the 3-second mark and select all the frames at that point and hit F5 to insert and increase the time along that line. Now when we test the movie, this is going to have the welcome move into place and the digital animation mask move into place. And you can see there's a lot of moving parts that's kind of difficult to see on this timeline. But if we go up to Control and Test, here's what our final animation looks like. Pretty cool. I think the last thing that I'm going to do is to add some easing in and out for each of these different masks that are animated. So going back to my mask, selecting the first keyframe on it, we'll go up to our tweening. Let's do some ease in and out for that. And then also some easing in and out for the words welcome to. Selecting that keyframe and doing some quadratic easing for those. Now when we control the movie and test it, comes up a little bit more naturally. At this time, we can go up to File. Let's save our document. Make sure your name is on your document, and we'll call it our layer mask. The file format should be an animate document, and we'll hit save. Now here's a bonus opportunity for you. For 5 extra bonus points on any project or exercise this semester, I want you to finish out this animation by having the text and the bar disappear back to its original position. So in other words, as we've animated the text appearing onto the stage, I want you to have the text disappearing and returning back to its original position. Do this and I'll throw 5 extra bonus points your way.